My name is Amy, and this is Amy's Album of the Week. This week, I guess this is the first one that I'm doing on video, but there are a few that I've done through text, and I plan to transpose those eventually. But this week I listened to F Sharp, A Sharp, Infinity by Godspeed You, Black Emperor, which is a group that I've not really heard of before, but I found them somewhere. I was looking for names for one of my friend's D&D campaigns because he does JoJo thing, and I thought that it was a really cool name. So that's how I found them, and then I decided to listen to what I believe is their debut album. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I was impressed. I've got to say that my approach to this is unique because I want to engage. I don't want to call myself unique, but my approach to reviewing albums is that like I want to engage in the personal aspect of how I listen to this and not so much the like objective truth thing, which I think is dumb. So I was doing my homework and I just felt I'm having a terrible night, and I just thought of them, and it was the perfect soundtrack for me pacing back and forth in my dorm. My roommate's gone. I just had space to be manic, and it was perfect. I do think I'm a little bit predisposed to enjoying this album, just because I love noise music and prog rock, which it's kind of melding in this album. Uh, they reminded me a lot of, well, they I believe I would classify them as post rock. They remind me a lot of Sigur Rós, which is a group I really enjoy, and they don't exist in a similar sonic space, but I think they're bringing similar ideas to their compositions. A few things that I loved about this album. I loved how lyric heavy it wasn't. There are very few like lyric bits that are there, and I love that. I love that it's trying to and succeeding at being more atmospheric. Uh, one of my favorite bits was actually somewhere around the beginning of the second song or the end of the first song. There's like a bagpipe sample, or maybe not a sample. It could be a live performance. I don't know. But it was it was a little funny, but it did genuinely contribute to the atmosphere. It didn't take me out of it. Um, Kind of reminds me of on combat one of Combat Wounded Veterans albums. I think it's this is not an erect on the unbody. There's a vibroslap in one of the songs, and I thought it was really funny, but it didn't take me out of it. And I think it contributed to the song. I think it kind of brings you back down to earth for a little bit. Like I feel like music like post rock is so easy to get lost in, and I think that it's the best post rock is some that grounds you a little bit in addition to letting you kind of float. Because like I think that great music should make you think about yourself. And if you're just floating, you're not really thinking. Um I This album's like an hour long. It's like three tracks. Bit of a tough listen for me just because I'm so attention deficit, but great homework soundtrack for struggling. It's what I did. Um there was a solo section at the end of the whole album. I don't know if I'd call it a solo, but it's definitely like cutting to this guitar heavy, like far away, but still very loud, like vocal run. That's the wrong word. Um, like musical just blowout. And it's great. I love it feels like the band is mixed so that it feels like they're at the end of the Grand Canyon and you're at the other end. It's awesome. It's like you're hearing the echo of a great show, and I don't know. It takes me to like the shows that I've seen, how I felt watching those shows, which is recently somewhat surreal. And I feel like that feeling of being like taking me back to that feeling of being like part of the crowd, like part of this ball of energy. That was really nice to hear in an album, which is not something I can say about a lot of music, that it inspires energy within me. Um, I mean, the production was amazing. I have no idea whether or not this band is good. I've heard one album. I've listened to an hour and 3 minutes of their music. But if you like post rock, if you're willing to give an hour to post rock, I recommend it. I think overall for the average person, it's probably about like a 78% recommend. I think it's worth your time. Uh, I'm not the authority on what you should listen to, but I enjoyed it. I think you'd enjoy it. And that's about it. Lock in next week for when I actually fulfill the promise that I made to the people who've been reading my column thing, and finally review Come On Pilgrim by the Pixies. And then after that, Pacer by the Amps, which is another great album. I will see you next week.